Joining us now is one of the staunch conservatives and warriors up there on Capitol Hill, Georgia Congressman Doug Collins. He sits on the House Judiciary Committee and was one of the leaders in the president's impeachment defense. Congressman, welcome back. Great to see you.
Chris, good to see you as always.
Before we get to Speaker Pelosi, you've been one of the few lawmakers to speak out about this. You know, we've documented here on the Chris Salcedo Show how several airlines, including American Airlines, Frontier, and Delta, have aligned themselves with this Marxist movement, Black Lives Matter, and their organization. A BLM flag actually was raised outside of Delta headquarters. Should these companies be getting taxpayer dollars from pro-American, pro-Trump, pro-capitalism taxpayers?
Yeah, I think this is a problem that they have right now because they're in an industry that has been terribly affected by the pandemic, and they brought a lot of this on themselves. I think what we've got to understand is if they want to make sure that if they want to treat all of American public, then they're going to have to actually, be open to the ideas here. And in groups like that they're promoting right now, Black Lives Matter, who have been at odds with the government, who've been at odds in many of these cities where they have been riots and protests. Those are things that are going to have to ask them. It makes it very difficult to be sympathetic when they would want to espouse ideas like that.
I wanted you to, if you could, to expose the game that Nancy Pelosi is playing up there. We all know she's angling to get bailouts for all of these left-wing states that were in trouble, quite frankly, before the China virus. So she wants to hold aid to hardworking Americans hostage so she can get all of us to pitch in and bail out Democrat incompetence on the state level. And she's willing to keep the suffering going from Americans who don't deserve it. How does she get away with this?
Well, she gets away with it because she has a willing caucus that lets her do it. And what's happened is, let's be very clear, Chris, ever since she became Speaker last January, all they have wanted to do is defeat this president. They have no agenda to help the American people. They have no agenda to want to say, here's how we can help. And when the COVID crisis hit, all they want to do is blame President Trump. Now you have her holding up a standalone bill to help folks, but also to help a bigger package that would help small businesses like our restaurants, our hospitality industries, our hoteliers. And she will not even touch that unless you give in to her pet peeves and that she wants to have of bailing out these states, of actually expanding amnesty and our criminal, and things that are going on in our voting and nationwide voting system, repealing voter ID laws. This is all piled in together. Don't be fooled by what she says on one hand, but yet be really knowledgeable on what she wants to do on the other. And that is to take the country down a very socialist path, and she wants to do it at the expense of those folks in the country who have been suffering through the COVID virus.
And this is really what ticks me off, because this disgraceful woman, instead of doing what she was hired to do as the Speaker of the House and a so-called representative from California, instead of doing the people's work, she wants to undertake garbage and complete election year theatrics like this. Watch.
You just said, do you think it's time to invoke the 25th Amendment?
I'll talk to you about that tomorrow. I'll talk to you about it tomorrow.
The 25th Amendment. They're going back to this again. Of course, I don't want to go through all the constitutional hurdles they would have to leap over to get there that they're never going to get. But they just want to drag this out, that they're going to try to remove the president because they think he's nuts.
Well, I mean, she's showing full well what her motives are. Maybe it's time with it. If all, as our minority leader once said, if she continues down this path, maybe it's time for a motion to vacate the chair. Maybe we need to remove Nancy Pelosi as Speaker and make the Democrats have to go on record supporting this kind of nonsense coming from her. This is just ridiculous. The American people deserve so much better. This is just a complete waste of taxpayer dollars. And frankly, my concern is when did the Speaker's office be the front person for the Democratic National Committee and the front person to try and help Joe Biden get elected after the just fiasco of him being in the basement the whole election cycle? They're desperate. They know they're desperate. They got a president who is leading, a president who is out there up front, and they are making every case they can to show the American people how extreme they really are.
Ignored in the debate so far, and Vice President Pence did his best to bring this up last night, was Obamagate. And the DNI, my understanding is he's beginning to roll these documents out, unredacted, so we know exactly what Democrat socialists did to us, this country, back in 2016. Number one, do you have a schedule for that? Or number two, have you seen any of these documents, and what can you tell us?
Well, I think they're going out now. Some of this stuff is stuff that we have known, Chris. We've talked about this before. Going back to 2016, when now we have proof that the Hillary Clinton campaign were the ones that said, let's gin this up. And then they had the willing accomplices of Strzok and Comey and the rest of them in the DOJ on this Hurricane Crossfire investigation where they're just going to attack. And let's remember what they did here. They not only went after the candidate Trump at that time, they went after people in his campaign, American citizens that they were targeting with spying. They spied on the campaign. Now, for all of us who've been releasing these transcripts, we released transcripts last year, if you remember, about all the investigation that we had done in the House that the Democrats wouldn't release. We released those that began to pull back the shadow and pull back the curtain of what they were doing. Now, John Ratcliffe, who I was a dear friend of mine, I'm so glad he's up there doing what he's doing. He's showing that this went all the way to the White House. President Obama cannot deny this. He was briefed on it. We've known this with Flynn. Now we know it with Brennan. If I was them and I was watching out, I'd be very careful because they're now exposed to the American people for what they are as the most corrupt administration we've had in a long time, especially when it came to attacking candidate Donald Trump and then President Donald Trump. This has to end. People need to be indicted and people need to go to jail because they need to, the American people need to know that you just can't do a corrupt cabal and have to try and overthrow a presidency or a candidacy just because you don't like them.
Boy, you said that. Congressman, sir, I appreciate the time here on the Chris Salcedo Show as always.
Chris, always good to be with you.